State senators in Montpelier have approved the year's big climate change bill known as S5, establishing a new clean heat standard. It aims to push Vermonters off of their fossil fuel heating systems by making oil and gas and propane and kerosene more expensive in the years ahead. In the process, reducing Vermont's CO2 emissions. Top supporters made their case here last Sunday.
This bill is slated to run through 2050, and so it's putting us on a transition from where we are now, very reliant on fossil fuels to heat our homes, to one where we have much cleaner, lower emitting fuels in the future.
We've done the homework on this, and Vermonters can trust that the process has not been rushed, and the questions that are still out there are because we're trying something relatively new.
Well, at his news conference this week, Governor Phil Scott said there are still many unanswered questions, like how much S5 will cost Vermonters to switch over to new heating systems and better insulate their homes. Who will do all of that work? Some electrical contractors say they're not even close. All questions the governor said Vermonters deserve to know before the legislature makes this the law. This morning, Natural Resources Secretary Julie Moore joins us to outline what we know about the transition costs of S5, especially for Vermont's poorest households. She said she should have some better answers by June. Julie Moore, welcome back to NBC5 In Depth.
Thanks, Stuart. It's nice to be with you.
Well, it's great to talk with you. Does the administration support Senate Bill 5?
Well, while we support the goal of Senate Bill 5, which is to reduce carbon emissions associated with the building and thermal sector, we do not support S5 as drafted.
What is your principal concern?
That the legislature does not have the information necessary to make informed decisions about the cost impacts that this program could have on Vermonters. We believe that there's additional data collection and technical analysis that's needed in order to have an informed conversation about the design of a clean heat program.
So the key problem here is the transition from an oil-dependent thermal economy to electric and wood.
Exactly.
And what it would do to those who are still burning oil in the interim.
Correct.
And you have estimated that the price will spike in order to fund the transition.
Correct. We believe that in order to achieve the requirements of S5 as currently drafted, will require an investment of about $2 billion between now and 2030. That's in things like weatherizing homes and installing heat pumps. In order to cover the costs of those transformational improvements, the expectation is fuel suppliers will purchase clean heat credits, and the revenue from the sale of those credits will be used to fund weatherization and heat pumps. The question is, where do fuel suppliers get the money to purchase the credits? And the most likely place that they will go is by raising the cost of the fuel they are selling to Vermonters.
Which will create further incentive to switch.
Correct. It is intended to be a bit of a virtuous cycle.
Right.
The challenge is for those that are still heating their homes with propane, fuel oil number 2, or kerosene, that they're going to be carrying that cost until they can afford to make the switch.
But won't there be lots of government assistance? Could there be state financing to help people, buy that heat pump?
Currently, there are incentives available through Efficiency Vermont, and we believe there will be federal tax rebates provided as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. That said, there aren't grant programs that help people with those upfront costs. Oftentimes, you need to be able to afford the cost of the installation and then seek some amount of reimbursement from one or more of these incentive programs.
And you have we know, a labor force issue. We don't have enough electricians in our state and in our country. Every state is facing this, right?
Yes.
So is it a timeline issue? Is the 2030 deadline that is in law now the problem?
The 2030 deadline in law now is what drives the level of activity that's needed, and it would be a dramatic acceleration from current work. We know that there aren't enough electricians, there aren't enough crews available to weatherize homes. We understand that workers in those spaces are turning down jobs right now, and this is before we would promote something that would result in a dramatic escalation in the number of jobs that need to be accomplished every year.
Do electric heat pumps, the fuel dealers have noted that when it was super cold a few weeks back, well below zero, that the calls that they got in the middle of the night were for electric heat pumps that didn't work.
Yes.
What is your understanding about that?
Yeah, I've heard similar anecdotes that once the outdoor air temperature drops below about 15 degrees below zero, that heat pumps are no longer able to function. And understand also from friends and relatives that have heat pumps installed that their systems were challenged to keep up as temperatures drop below zero.
What about those who heat with wood? Would they be affected by S5?
Advanced wood heat is considered a clean heat technology, so there's a bit of an it depends. The older model wood stoves aren't considered clean heat, but then again, if you're purchasing cordwood from a local logger or woodsman, it's unlikely to be affected directly by the clean heat standard.
And if we move to electric heat pumps, what will that do you think, to the price of a kilowatt hour in Vermont in the years ahead?
The fact of the matter is we don't know. That's one of the unanswered questions we have and have put before the legislature, is understanding not only the cost on a gallon of heating fuel, but also the cost that would be incurred in terms of changes of electricity rates.
So, bottom line, as this bill moves to the House, obviously the political dynamic in the House has changed this year, and you narrowly had your veto sustained last year. What are you hoping for? What are the questions that you hope Vermonters will seek from the House?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to keep in mind transitions cost money, they take time, and they require planning. And we have significant concerns that we haven't checked all of those boxes when it comes to contemplating the application of a clean heat standard. My hope is that when this bill moves to the House, they will ask some of those hard questions and be willing to wait for the time needed to generate answers.
So when you say the time needed, the bottom line for the administration to get to a yes is what?
Well, so currently the Agency of Natural Resources has a contractor in place who is doing some of what we see as this foundational work, evaluating the likely impact on the cost of heating fuel as well as on electricity rates. We expect to have the answers back from that study by the middle of June, and it would allow time to have robust conversation with Vermonters about what the likely impacts of a clean heat standard approach would be, and come back to the legislature next session with that information in hand to inform the conversation about how to actually design the policy.
Natural Resources Secretary Julie Moore, pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
With Senate passage, the House will now take up S5 after the town meeting break. The House could change it, of course, but a footnote. On Thursday, the Senate did not muster enough votes to override a veto from the governor if it comes to that.